The sky above Earth was calm, but beneath it, things were about to change forever. Humans, once proud of their place in the universe, were about to learn how fragile their existence truly was. A massive alien fleet appeared in the sky, descending slowly like a storm ready to consume everything in its path. The ships were sleek, dark, and menacing, with technology so advanced that even the brightest human minds couldn't comprehend it. At the heart of the fleet was a striking figure. A queen of aliens, her eyes glowing with cold confidence. She was unlike anything humanity had seen before, beautiful, powerful, and absolutely ruthless. Her name was Xiren, and she had come to claim Earth as her own. With a voice that carried across the atmosphere, she proclaimed that humans were nothing but livestock, mere animals to be used at her will. The first sign of the invasion came when cities fell silent, their communications blocked by the alien forces. People looked up in horror as the ships hovered above, casting shadows over entire populations. Governments scrambled, sending their best forces to try and defend the planet. But they were no match for the overwhelming might of the invaders. Even the strongest military machines were easily torn apart by the alien weapons, which seemed to bend reality itself. Xiren had no intention of negotiation. She had no interest in peace or diplomacy. To her, the humans were beneath her, creatures to be controlled and exploited. She declared her dominance with a chilling statement that echoed around the world. Humans are livestock, and I am the master of this herd. No one dared to challenge her, for fear of her power. As Earth descended into chaos, a young human man, Jack, stood in the ruins of what had once been a bustling city. He had heard the Queen's proclamation, but something in him refused to accept it. His heart burned with defiance, with a fierce determination to fight back against the odds. Jack was no soldier, but he had something that the aliens hadn't counted on: hope and the courage to rise. When everything seemed lost, Jack began organizing small groups of survivors, teaching them how to fight back, to survive in a world that no longer seemed like their own. He knew they were outgunned, outnumbered, and outclassed in every way, but still, they fought. They would not go down without a fight. The world had changed, but Jack refused to let humanity be wiped out so easily. As the alien forces tightened their grip on the planet, Jack met a surprising figure, a mysterious woman from the alien fleet who claimed to be against her queen's rule. Her name was Lissa, and she was not like the others. Beautiful, intelligent, and full of a quiet fire, Lissa had her own reasons for opposing Xiren. She revealed to Jack a shocking secret. Xiren's true goal was not just to dominate Earth. She sought to breed a new race of superior beings, combining the best traits of human and alien. This revelation left Jack stunned. If Xiren was allowed to succeed, Earth would be irrevocably changed, not just in terms of its rulers, but in the very nature of the human race. Jack's fight had just become much bigger than survival. He was now part of something far more dangerous. The fate of humanity itself rested on his shoulders. The war had raged for weeks, and Earth was beginning to feel the weight of the alien invasion. Major cities were in ruins, and the world's governments were on the brink of collapse. Hope seemed like a distant memory as the alien forces continued their march across the planet, claiming it as their own. Humanity, once so powerful and proud, was now reduced to a shadow of its former self. But amidst the chaos, Jack's resistance grew. With Lissa's help, they managed to secure a small foothold in the wilderness, far from the alien forces that dominated the cities. They had gathered survivors, people who refused to surrender, who still believed in the power of humanity's will. Together, they formed a small army, ready to take on the seemingly unstoppable alien invasion. Jack and Lissa had been working closely together, forming a bond born from the need to survive. Lissa's knowledge of the alien technology proved invaluable. She had once been part of Xiren's inner circle, a trusted advisor to the Queen, but now she had turned against her. Jack had a hard time understanding why she had chosen to betray her people. But the more they worked together, the more he saw the pain in her eyes. She had seen the true horrors that Zirin had unleashed on countless planets. Her queen's plans were far darker than even Jack had imagined. Lissa's decision to join the humans was born from guilt and a deep desire to stop Zirin from achieving her twisted goals. She knew that the aliens' breeding experiments were the key to Zirin's ultimate plan. If she succeeded, Earth would be forever lost to the alien race. One night, as they sat around a fire, Jack found himself speaking to Lissa in a way he never had before. He spoke of his hopes for the future, of what it meant to fight for something more than just survival. He spoke of a world where humans were free, where they could rebuild, where they could start anew. Lissa listened quietly, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and longing. "I never thought I would find someone who still believed in this," Lissa said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought the human spirit had been broken, but you..." She paused, her gaze meeting his. "You give me hope that we can still win this, that we can take back what's ours and stop Zirin's twisted plans." Jack didn't know how to respond. He had never expected someone like Lissa to be on his side. She was an alien, someone who had once stood beside Zirin, but now she was fighting for the same cause. She had become an unexpected ally, one who was willing to risk everything to ensure humanity's survival. As the days passed, the resistance began to grow stronger. Jack and Lissa continued to train their fighters, teaching them how to utilize the alien technology they had acquired. Lissa's knowledge was crucial, and her guidance made their efforts far more effective than Jack had ever anticipated. They were no longer just surviving, they were fighting back. And for the first time in weeks, Jack felt a spark of hope ignite in his heart. But as they prepared for a major strike against one of the alien strongholds, Jack couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. The closer they got to the heart of the enemy's power, the more dangerous their mission became. They were up against the very force that had wiped out entire civilizations. They were about to face Zirin herself. Lissa could sense Jack's unease. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "You've already done more than I could have ever imagined. We'll face this together." Jack looked at her, a sense of gratitude filling his chest. He had no idea what the future held, but he knew one thing. He wasn't fighting alone. With Lissa by his side and the resistance growing stronger every day, he finally felt like they had a chance. The time for waiting was over. It was time to strike back. The alien queen would learn that humanity was not so easily defeated. They would fight with everything they had, and they would make sure the queen's reign of terror ended once and for all. Jack and Lissa shared a silent moment, their eyes locked in mutual understanding. They were about to lead the final charge. The war for Earth was about to take a turn, and neither of them would back down. They were ready. The days leading up to the assault on the alien stronghold were filled with a tense energy. Jack's team had grown in numbers and strength, but there was still an underlying fear that loomed over them. They were going up against the heart of the enemy's empire, the place where Zirin herself resided. Despite their growing confidence, the thought of facing the queen filled many of them with doubt. Jack could feel the pressure mounting with each passing hour. He had promised the survivors that they would strike back, that they would take their world back from the invaders. The weight of those words had never felt heavier. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of humanity. Every decision he made could lead to victory or defeat. Lissa had been by his side every step of the way. She was calm and collected, a stark contrast to the turmoil Jack felt inside. Despite her past, she had become a guiding force for the resistance. She knew the alien fleet inside and out, and her knowledge of their technology had been invaluable. She had not only provided the key to their resistance's success, but also a spark of hope. But even with all their preparation, Jack knew they were walking into the lion's den. The alien stronghold was heavily fortified. And Zirin was not a queen to be underestimated. She had crushed countless enemies in her wake. And now, Earth was her next conquest. Jack didn't believe in fate, but he knew this was the moment of truth. They either fought back and took a stand, or they were doomed to become the slaves of a cruel, merciless queen. The night before the assault, Jack sat in the makeshift command center, his mind racing. The map of the alien stronghold glowed in front of him, marking out the paths they would take. His fingers hovered over the holographic display as he considered each move carefully. Every step had to be calculated. One wrong move could mean the end of their rebellion. Lissa walked up behind him, her eyes soft but filled with determination. "You're not alone in this, Jack," she said, her voice steady. "We've come this far together, and we'll finish this together. We have a chance, and we will take it." Jack turned to look at her. There was something in her eyes that gave him confidence. Something he hadn't realized he needed until now. "Thank you, Lissa," he said quietly. "I'm glad I'm not alone." The night was long, but the next morning, the assault began. The resistance moved swiftly, using every advantage they had gained over the last few weeks. They infiltrated the stronghold's defenses, cutting through the outer layers with ease. The alien soldiers were taken by surprise, unprepared for a human force that could hit them so hard and fast. Jack led his team with precision, staying one step ahead of their enemies. But they were met with fierce resistance as they made their way closer to the heart of the stronghold. The deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. Alien guards flooded the halls, weapons charged and ready to strike. Despite the intense combat, Jack's team fought with everything they had, each member knowing that the fate of the human race rested on their success. In the midst of the battle, Jack's mind was focused solely on one goal: reaching Zirin. The alien queen was the key to everything. If they could take her down, the rest of the invasion would crumble. It wasn't just about defeating her. It was about ending the war once and for all. As they neared the Queen's chamber, the resistance was met with an overwhelming force. Alien reinforcements poured in from every direction, forcing Jack and his team into a desperate retreat. But Jack refused to give up. He pushed forward, determined to reach Zirin and confront her. Lissa was right by his side, her alien strength and agility giving them an edge in the close-quarters combat. Together, they fought through wave after wave of alien soldiers, their weapons clashing in the echoing halls of the stronghold. The final stretch was in sight. They could hear Zirin's voice ahead, commanding her forces to prepare for the inevitable. She knew they were coming. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he prepared to face the Queen. He knew this was the moment that would decide everything. It would be a battle unlike any they had fought before. Jack had fought for survival, but now he was fighting for the future. Lissa glanced at him, her expression serious. "You've come this far," she said. "This is our fight now. Jack, we take her down and we free Earth from her control." Jack nodded, his resolve firm. They were almost there. This was the last stand, the moment that would determine the fate of the human race. There was no turning back now. The air was thick with tension as Jack and his team stormed the final stretch of the alien stronghold. The sounds of battle echoed through the halls, but they were determined to reach the heart of the enemy's power. The Queen's chamber was within sight now, the metallic doors looming ahead like the gateway to their fate. They could hear her voice echoing faintly, commanding her forces. With an air of cold authority, Lissa stood beside Jack, her eyes narrowed with focus. "This is it," she whispered. "Zirin is not going to go down easily. We need to be ready for anything." Jack nodded, his grip tightening around his weapon. His heart raced, but his mind was clear. This was what they had been working toward, the moment that would either free Earth or seal its doom. He knew that once they stepped through those doors, there would be no turning back. With a single motion, Jack led the charge. The doors to Zirin's chamber slid open with a hiss. revealing the alien queen sitting upon her throne. She was regal and imposing, her eyes glowing with malice. Her presence alone made the air feel heavy, as if the room itself was bending to her will. Ziren's gaze swept over the humans who had dared to come this far, a cruel smile curling at the corners of her lips. "So, you've come to challenge me," she said, her voice dripping with amusement. "Do you truly think you can defeat me, little humans? You are nothing more than cattle to be herded, animals to be slaughtered. I have already won this war." Jack stepped forward, not backing down. "You may have taken our cities, but you haven't broken our spirit. We will not let you control us. This ends now." Ziren's smile widened as she rose from her throne. "How typical," she said, her voice full of contempt. "You humans have always been so stubborn. You fight for your freedom as if you have the right to it, but you don't. You belong to me, and soon. Your species will be nothing more than a tool to serve my empire." Jack's heart burned with fury. He couldn't let her continue. The future of humanity was at stake, and he wasn't about to let this tyrant win. "We will never be your slaves. This is our world, and we will fight for it." With a sudden motion, Ziren raised her hand, her powers crackling in the air around them. A powerful blast of energy shot toward Jack and his team, forcing them to scatter and take cover. Her power was immense, far beyond anything they had faced before. Jack felt the weight of her anger in every strike, the room shaking with the force of her fury. Lissa moved quickly, her alien agility giving her an edge. She rushed toward the queen, her weapon drawn, but Ziren was faster. With a flick of her wrist, she sent Lissa crashing into the wall with a force that left her gasping for breath. Jack's heart skipped a beat, but he couldn't afford to hesitate. He had to act now. With a shout, Jack lunged forward, firing his weapon toward Ziren. The blast hit her shield, sending a shockwave through the chamber. She snarled in frustration, her eyes glowing brighter with rage. "You dare challenge me?" she hissed. Ziren's power surged again, this time more forcefully. The ground beneath them cracked open, and the air filled with the sound of energy being manipulated by the alien queen. The resistance fighters fired back, but their weapons seemed insignificant against Ziren's overwhelming force. The walls of the chamber began to collapse, the very structure of the stronghold shaking with the intensity of the battle. Jack's mind raced as he dodged another blast. They couldn't keep this up forever. The queen's strength was overwhelming, but there had to be a way to defeat her. He looked around the room, desperate for any advantage. Then, his eyes fell on something. In the center of the chamber was a large crystal, glowing with the same energy that powered the alien weapons. If they could disrupt the power source, they might stand a chance. "Lissa, the crystal!" Jack shouted. "We need to take it out." Lissa, still recovering from the impact of Ziren's attack, pushed herself to her feet. "I see it. We'll have to get close. Keep her distracted." Jack nodded, knowing it would be dangerous. But there was no other choice. He took a deep breath and charged forward, firing his weapon to keep Ziren's attention on him. The queen roared in fury, turning toward him with a deadly glare. As she did, Lissa moved quickly, darting toward the crystal, her movements swift and precise. Jack's heart raced as he felt the intensity of the battle all around him. The fate of Earth was in their hands. Now, every moment counted. They couldn't afford to fail. With a final, powerful strike, Lissa reached the crystal. She activated a hidden mechanism that caused the energy source to begin destabilizing. The entire chamber began to shake violently as Ziren's control over the stronghold started to falter. Ziren's eyes widened in realization. "No!" she screamed. "This cannot be!" But it was too late. The crystal cracked, sending a wave of energy through the chamber that sent Ziren sprawling to the ground. The alien queen's reign of terror was finally over. The chamber trembled as the crystal shattered, its energy cascading through the room. The once dominant queen, who had ruled over countless worlds with an iron fist, now lay vulnerable on the floor. Her power, her control, everything that had made her invincible, was unraveling before her. The shockwaves from the explosion had knocked her off her feet, and she struggled to regain her footing. Xiren's fury was palpable. "You think you've won?" she hissed, her voice full of venom. She struggled to stand, her strength flickering like a dying flame. "You are nothing. You cannot defeat me. I am eternal." Jack's eyes narrowed, his heart pounding with both relief and determination. The battle wasn't over yet. The queen was still a threat, but her power was waning. They had to finish this now. Before she could recover, Lissa moved swiftly to Jack's side, her breathing heavy from the earlier confrontation. "We've done it," she said, her voice tense but filled with hope. "She's weakened. We need to act fast before she finds a way to recover." Jack nodded, his eyes never leaving Xiren as she struggled to rise. "This is it," he said. "We end this now." Xiren's eyes burned with hatred as she slowly stood, the air crackling around her. "You cannot destroy me. I will rise again. You are nothing but insects beneath my feet." Lissa stepped forward, her voice steady. "You're wrong, Xiren. We've fought for this world, for humanity. You've taken everything, but you'll take no more. You may have controlled worlds, but you will not control Earth." Xiren's lips twisted into a snarl. "I will make you regret this." She spat. She raised her hand, and the air around her began to glow with a terrifying power. A blast of energy shot from her outstretched hand, crashing into the walls of the chamber. The walls buckled, and debris rained down around them. But Jack was ready. He leaped forward, diving behind a fallen column for cover. Lissa followed closely, using the debris as her shield. The queen's attacks were powerful, but Jack knew they couldn't keep dodging forever. They had to strike back. "Lissa, we need to finish this," Jack said urgently. "We can't wait any longer." Lissa nodded, her expression grim. "We've come too far to fail now. We take her down, or we lose everything." Jack took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of his strength. He had never been a soldier, but he had learned what it meant to fight for something greater than himself. For humanity, for the future, he would stand firm. "Let's end this." With renewed resolve, they both surged forward, weapons drawn. Xiren unleashed another wave of energy, but this time they were prepared. They ducked and weaved, staying one step ahead of the queen's attacks. Jack fired a shot, and though it missed, it drew Xiren's attention long enough for Lissa to close the gap. In a flash, Lissa was upon Xiren, her blade aimed at the queen's heart. Xiren roared in fury and tried to raise her hand to strike, but she was too slow. Lissa's strike landed with precision, her weapon piercing through the queen's defenses. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Xiren's eyes widened in shock, her mouth opening in a silent scream. She had been defeated, but she couldn't accept it. She collapsed to her knees, her once proud form crumbling beneath the weight of her own power. Jack stood frozen for a moment, watching as the alien queen fell. It was over. The reign of terror had ended, and Earth was free. They had done it. Lissa stood over Xiren's lifeless body, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. She turned to Jack, her face a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "It's done," she said softly. "We've won." Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. The war was over, but there was still so much to rebuild. Earth had been shattered, its people broken, but the spirit of humanity had endured. They had fought for their future, and now it was theirs. The resistance fighters gathered around them, their faces reflecting a mix of disbelief and triumph. They had been the underdogs, outnumbered and outgunned, yet they had succeeded where the odds had been against them. Earth was theirs again. Jack looked at Lissa, his heart filled with gratitude. She had been the key to their victory. Without her knowledge and courage, they would have never made it this far. Thank you, Jack said quietly. We couldn't have done it without you. Lissa smiled faintly, her eyes tired but proud. We did it together. This victory is just the beginning. Earth will rebuild, and humanity will rise again. As the remnants of the alien stronghold began to crumble around them, Jack and Lissa looked out at the horizon. The world was in ruins. But it was their world now. The fight had been long, but Earth had endured, and for the first time in a long while, Jack felt a spark of hope ignite in his heart. The future was uncertain, but they would face it together. The battle for Earth was over. But the aftermath left a world in ruins. The resistance had succeeded. The alien queen defeated, and humanity was finally free. But freedom came at a great cost. The cities were shattered, the landscapes scarred by the war that had raged for so long. The survivors stood amidst the ruins, unsure of what their future would hold. Jack and Lissa stood together, looking out over the wreckage. The war had taken everything from them, but it had also given them something far more precious: hope. They had fought for the future, and now that future was within their grasp. Despite the devastation, there was a sense of triumph in the air. The survivors had fought with everything they had, and they had emerged victorious. They had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity would never give up. Lissa's face was still filled with a quiet strength, her eyes reflecting the toll the battle had taken. She had once been part of the alien empire that sought to control Earth, but now she was standing side by side with the humans she had once considered enemies. Her decision to betray Zirin had been the turning point in the war, but it had also marked a new beginning for her. She was no longer an alien, no longer an outsider. She had become part of something far greater than herself. Jack turned to her, a sense of gratitude and respect in his heart. You did more than just help us win. You gave us hope when we had none. Without you, none of this would have been possible. Lissa smiled faintly, her eyes weary but filled with pride. We did this together. It was never just me. It was all of us. The strength of humanity is what saved this world. You fought for it, and now it's yours to rebuild. The survivors began to gather in small groups, some looking for family members, others grieving the loss of friends. The destruction was overwhelming, but it was nothing compared to the sense of unity that had emerged from the ashes. People who had once been divided now stood together, bound by a common cause. The fight for freedom, for survival, had changed them all. Jack's thoughts turned to the future. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. There was much to be done, much to rebuild. The cities needed to be reconstructed, the farms replanted, the hospitals restored. But they would rebuild. They had the will to do so, and with that, they could overcome anything. Lissa's voice broke through his thoughts. We'll need help rebuilding the world. There's so much to do. But we have a chance to make things right. We have a chance to create something better. Jack nodded, his heart filled with a newfound determination. We'll make it happen. The world won't be the same, but we'll rebuild it stronger than before. We'll make sure this never happens again. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation settling in. The future was uncertain, but they no longer feared it. They had faced the worst and had come out on top. Now, they would face the challenges ahead with the same courage that had seen them through the war. In the distance, Jack saw the first rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds. It was a new day, a new beginning. The old world had been destroyed, but from its ashes, something new would rise, something better. Lissa looked up at the sky, her eyes scanning the horizon. This is just the beginning. The work isn't over. We've won the battle, but now we must rebuild the world. But together, we can do it. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice firm with conviction. We will rebuild it, and we'll make sure that humanity's future is one of freedom, equality, and peace. No one will ever enslave us again. We've fought for this. and will never stop fighting to protect it. As the first day of peace began, Jack and Lissa stood together, watching the world around them start to heal. The battle was over, but the journey was just beginning. The future of Earth was now in their hands. They would rebuild, they would thrive, and they would never forget the cost of their victory. The dawn of a new era had arrived, and it was one they would shape together. Weeks passed since the fall of Ziren, and the world continued its slow, painful recovery. The scars of war were everywhere. Buildings that once stood tall were now piles of rubble. The streets were empty, save for the survivors who worked tirelessly to clear the debris. Despite the destruction, there was a sense of unity among the people. They had come together in their darkest hour, and now they would rebuild together. Jack and Lissa stood at the forefront of the rebuilding efforts. Their leadership had brought humanity through the war, and now it would guide them toward the future. They had become symbols of hope, not just for the people who had fought alongside them, but for the future generations who would grow up in a world forever changed. The task ahead was daunting. Entire cities had been destroyed, and the infrastructure of Earth had crumbled. It was a monumental challenge, but the survivors had learned something important during the war. They could endure, they could adapt, and they could rebuild. Lissa worked alongside the humans, using her knowledge of alien technology to assist in their reconstruction. The alien technology that had once been used to subjugate Earth was now being repurposed to help it rise again. They had developed new energy sources, new methods of agriculture, and new forms of communication. Every day they made progress, though the road ahead was long. Despite the challenges, there was a sense of optimism that hadn't existed before. The war had brought out the best in humanity. People who had once been strangers now worked side by side, united by a common cause. They had seen what could happen when they fought together, and they would not let that hope die. Jack had found a new sense of purpose. He no longer fought just to survive. He fought to protect the future, to ensure that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. He had become a leader in every sense of the word, guiding the people through the rebuilding process. But even as they made progress, there were still remnants of the alien forces scattered across the globe. Small pockets of resistance, remnants of Ziren's fleet, had been left behind. They were no longer the threat they once were, but they were still a problem. Jack knew they couldn't rest until every last trace of the alien empire was eradicated. Lissa continued to play a crucial role in these efforts. Her knowledge of the alien forces was invaluable in tracking down the last of Ziren's loyalists. She had come a long way from the woman who had once fought for the alien queen. Now, she was helping to ensure that humanity remained free. One day, as Jack and Lissa walked through the ruins of a former city, Jack turned to her. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't fought back?" he asked. "What if we had just accepted the way things were?" Lissa paused for a moment, her eyes scanning the broken buildings. "I used to wonder the same thing," she said softly. "But now I know. We couldn't have given up. Not when there was a chance to change things. We fought for something worth saving, for a world where people can live freely, without fear." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. They had fought for freedom, for a future where humanity could live on its own terms. They had sacrificed so much, but in the end, it had been worth it. As they continued their walk, a young girl approached them. She was holding a small plant, carefully cradling it in her hands. "Is this the new crop?" Jack asked with a smile. The girl nodded, her eyes bright with excitement. "Yes," she said. "It's growing better than anything we had before. The new technology really works." Jack's heart swelled with pride. This was the future they had fought for. A future where the next generation would have more than just survival. They would have hope, growth, and the chance to thrive. Lissa looked at the girl, and then at Jack. "This is just the beginning," she said. "We've come a long way, but there's still so much more to do. The world isn't perfect, but it's ours. And as long as we keep fighting, we can make it better." Jack smiled at her, his voice full of determination. "We will make it better. We've seen what we can do when we work together, and we'll never stop fighting for that future." The world around them had been broken, but it was healing. It would take time, but the pieces were falling back into place. They had fought for Earth, for humanity, and now they would see it rise from the ashes. It would be a long journey, but Jack and Lissa knew that with hope in their hearts and the strength of their people, they could overcome anything. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. And together, they would ensure that humanity would never fall under the shadow of tyranny again. Months passed, and Earth slowly began to heal. The war had left deep scars on the land. But with every passing day, the survivors rebuilt what had been lost. The cities, once in ruins, now started to take shape again. The people worked tirelessly to restore the world, using the knowledge they had gained from both their own efforts and the alien technology they had repurposed. Jack stood at the top of a newly constructed tower, looking out over the city. The streets were filled with people, working together to rebuild their homes, their families, their futures. There was a sense of unity in the air that hadn't been present before. People no longer fought just for survival. They fought to create something better. Lissa stood beside him, her eyes focused on the horizon. "It's hard to believe how far we've come," she said softly. "Not too long ago, we were fighting for our lives. Now we're fighting to build something worth living for." Jack nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I never thought we'd make it this far. But here we are, and we'll keep going. We can't afford to forget what we fought for. This world, our world, is ours to protect." They both watched as a group of children ran through the streets, laughing and playing, their faces bright with hope. It was a sight that had been impossible to imagine just months ago. The next generation was growing up in a world that was free from oppression. They would never know the horrors that the previous generations had faced. And that was the greatest victory of all. Jack turned to Lissa, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You've changed everything, Lissa. Without you, none of this would have been possible. You were the key to our victory, and now you're helping us build a new world. I owe you everything." Lissa smiled, her gaze soft. "We did this together. You led the way, Jack. It's your strength that gave us the hope we needed to fight back. I'm just glad to have been a part of it. We all played a part in this. It's not just one person's victory. It's everyone's." Jack looked out over the city once more, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. The war was over, but their journey wasn't. There was still much to be done. They had to rebuild the infrastructure, restore the environment, and create a society that valued freedom above all else. They had to ensure that no one would ever be able to rise to power like Zyron again. Jack knew that the fight for Earth's future wasn't just about survival or defeating an enemy. It was about making sure that humanity could thrive, that the mistakes of the past wouldn't be repeated. As Jack walked through the streets, he could see the changes in the people around him. There was no longer the fear that had once gripped them. Now, there was only hope. The future was uncertain, but it was a future that they were ready to face together. Lissa continued to play a vital role in the rebuilding efforts. She worked closely with scientists and engineers to help integrate the alien technology into their world, ensuring that it was used for the benefit of all. The knowledge that had once been used to enslave them was now a tool for progress. One day, Jack and Lissa stood in front of a newly constructed building. It was a center for learning, where people could come together to share knowledge, ideas, and skills. It symbolized the future they were working toward, a world where the pursuit of knowledge and unity would be the foundation of everything. "This is it," Jack said, looking at the building with pride. "This is where the future starts, where the new generation will learn and grow, and where they'll continue the work we've begun." We'll teach them what we've learned, and they'll do even better. Lissa nodded, her eyes shining with pride. We've built a foundation that's strong enough to last. The world won't be perfect, but it will be better. We've shown that no matter how dark things get, we can always rise again. And this world, this new world, will belong to everyone. No one will ever control it again. As the sun set behind the horizon, Jack and Lissa stood together, looking out at the world they had saved. The streets were alive with activity, the hum of life returning to the planet. The battle was over, but the work was just beginning. They knew that there would be challenges ahead, but they also knew that humanity was capable of overcoming anything. They had faced the impossible, and they had come out on top. They had won their freedom, and now they were going to make sure it lasted. With a final glance at the city, Jack turned to Lissa. We've done it. The future is ours to build, and we will build it. Together, we'll make sure this world stays free. Lissa smiled, her voice steady. Yes, we will. And we'll make sure it's a world worth fighting. 4. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, they knew that the dawn of a new era had arrived, a new beginning, where hope, unity, and freedom would reign. The future was theirs, and they would protect it with everything they had.